I find that these days video games tend to take themselves a little bit too serious too often. I remember back in the 90s a lot of the enjoyment with video games came from the fact that they often didn't make a whole lot of sense, or were just made for the sake of making you chuckle. It was a great time to be a gamer. So whenever something absolutely wacky or over the top comes along, I can't help myself but give it a go. And the game we're looking at today is one such game. My Friend Pedro is a 2D bullet ballet shooter developed by indie developer DeadToast Entertainment and published by Devolver Digital. It released June 20th, 2019 for PC and the Nintendo Switch and is priced at €16.79. My Friend Pedro takes everything that one could consider cool and puts it together into a cocktail of over-the-top action and complete craziness to create one of the silliest and fun games of 2019. In My Friend Pedro, you take on the role of a nameless and mute character who finds himself in the basement of a meat factory that's headed by an organisation of retired mobsters, led by Mitch the Butcher. The protagonist doesn't remember anything about how he got there or who he is. All he knows is that he has to get out while being guided by his friend Pedro, a floating sentient banana who pretty much instructs him to kill the mobsters. As the protagonist progresses, one thing leads to another, as he finds himself facing off against Christmas-dressed mercenaries in a run-down derelict industrial district, gamers who have turned to pure violence in the sewers, and eventually making his way to the core of the internet. It is only then will he know the truth about his identity and his past. The plot to My Friend Pedro would be considered to be absolute rubbish. Generally speaking, that would be a bad thing, but with the way that My Friend Pedro as a game and its world is designed, it actually works. If there was to be a serious and straightforward plot, it wouldn't blend in well with the rest of the game. Despite its madness and stupidity, it works as it fits in with the world, the people and the general goings on in it. The plot does its job of creating the world and the people in it, but if you're looking for a deep, complex story, you aren't going to find it. If however you are looking for something that is completely and utterly silly and over the top, then My Friend Pedro will certainly satisfy. The objective of My Friend Pedro is to make your way through each level, killing anything that moves in the most stylish way possible. There is a total of 40 levels across 5 varying chapters. Each chapter has its own environment and unique enemies. The first chapter is set in Old Town, a run-down slum city area run by Mitch the Butcher and his retired mobsters. The second is District Null, the old half-built industrial area that is controlled by the festively dressed mercenaries. The third is Pedro's World, a dreamlike place where everything is backwards. The fourth is the sewers where the violent video gamers now reside, and the fifth and final chapter is the Internet, a technologically advanced facility. Each of the chapters is very distinctive and completely different from that of the others, where none outstay their welcome, giving a breath of fresh air throughout the entire game. The further you progress in the game, the more advanced and difficult the enemies become too, giving a steady but fair increase in difficulty. The problem with the levels is that the further you progress, the heavier the platforming of the game becomes. At the beginning of the game you may have the occasional moment where you need to avoid a security system, figure out a lever combo to progress, or get over an instant death drop. But by the time you reach the final chapter, security systems, levers, and such instant death drops or traps become the rule rather than the exception. I understand that they're there as a form of increasing difficulty of the game, but they detract from that of what you're playing My Friend Pedro for, to kill enemies against ridiculous odds in the most stylish way possible. You genuinely start to spend more time avoiding traps than actually figuring ways of defeating enemies. It is so disappointing too, as it makes the latter quarter of the game quite dull in comparison to the earlier stages. It is still fun, but nothing compared to that of the early game. But aside from that, the levels are very well designed, varied, and offer new and interesting challenges and ways to traverse the levels in your journey of obliteration, and are a joy for the most part. Then there is the general gameplay itself. The main goal of each level is to make your way to the end, killing all the enemies in the most stylish ways possible, and to have an ever-growing combo that lasts as long as possible. How this works is that each time you kill an enemy, your combo multiplier will increase by 1. You will have a certain amount of time to kill another enemy to keep that combo building, or if you take damage, it will lower the timer significantly. If you are quick and tactical enough, you will be able to continue growing your combo from the beginning of the level to the very end, to achieve a massive score. At the end of the level, your statistics are totaled, including time, points, enemies killed, no deaths bonus, and difficulty bonus. Depending on how many points you earned along with the other statistics, you will receive a rank which will be either C, B, A or S. The more stylish each kill is, the more points you will gain. For example, you will gain more points for a split kill, where you shoot two enemies opposite sides of you at the same time. Or if you kill an enemy while jumping or diving through the air, you will gain more points than just when you're standing still. To help you pull these incredible feats, you can enter slow-mo or bullet time if you prefer. This slows everything right down, allowing you extra time, though not long, to bring your majestic bullet ballet skills to their full potential. While active, the slow-mo bar, or focus bar as it's called, will lower, and if it runs out you won't be able to activate slow-mo until it starts to recharge. However, each kill regenerates some of the bar, so it is never much of an issue when it comes to running out. Of course, those types of kills that I mentioned are but a few. There are a lot more than that. Others include things like dodge kill, where you kill an enemy while doing a bullet dodge ballet twirl to avoid getting shot and receiving damage. Ricochet kills, where you kick a frying pan in the air and shoot it, causing bullets to ricochet and kill enemies nearby. Think fast kills that involve kicking an item like a basketball or a knife or even an enemy's head to kill another. The dramatic entrance, where you burst through a window killing an enemy in the process, and so on and so forth. The shooting in My Friend Pedro and the whole combo and slow-mo systems are an absolute treat and are extremely well polished. It controls extremely well and is always satisfying no matter how far in the game you progress. The sheer amount of different and interesting ways you can cause an enemy's demise is fantastic, and has the player get creative in how they deal with an enemy. And just to glorify the whole thing ever more, the game has an integrated system where it records your most amazing moment in a level and saves it as a GIF that can then be saved for later viewing or shared via social media. It is an added little detail that, while it doesn't interest me, will be a real treat for those who enjoy showing off their gaming for bragging rights. It's really well done. There are a total of 7 weapons in the game. There is the pistol, the dual pistols, Uzi, dual Uzis, pump action shotgun, assault rifle and the sniper rifle. Each of the weapons in the game is highly satisfying to use, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses when dealing with specific enemies in varying circumstances. So choosing the right weapon for the right enemy or circumstance doesn't just make things easier from a difficulty perspective, but also to keep that combo growing too. When you combine the weapons and how well they work with the solid adrenaline filled action, you're in for a wailing good time that few games could ever hope to achieve, let alone an indie game. When you look at the trailer for My Friend Pedro, you know that it is the developer that you see controlling the character, and it does make you wonder whether or not you would be able to pull it off too. The short answer is yes, you can, and quite easily too with a bit of practice. The controls of the game are very well designed. They are smooth and responsive, making it easy to control the character despite all his jumps, twists and twirls throughout the gameplay. The only time I found the controls to be a bit floaty is when using the skateboard and barrels to move around. It can at times be hard to get your footing on them, and when on them, especially the skateboard, it can be hard to stay on when jumping. This floatiness makes it a bit difficult when aiming for the S rank on certain levels where they play a big role, but other than that, the controlling of the character is great. There is one thing to consider when it comes to My Friend Pedro before you buy it. That is, playing the actual game from start to finish in normal difficulty won't take any longer than about 3 hours. The rest of the playtime comes from replaying the levels across the various difficulties, attempting to master them and getting the S rank in each. The game having a start to finish time of 3 hours isn't a big deal, and the quality, polish and general fun more than makes up for its short time. It is still a worthy purchase. But if replaying levels and level rankings aren't to your interests, the relatively short campaign is something you should keep in mind. There are 3 difficulty levels in My Friend Pedro, those being normal, hard and bananas. The lower the difficulty, the easier the game is, with enemies being less accurate and reactive, along with the player having slow health regeneration and bullet dodge assistance. But the harder difficulty makes enemies react very quickly, with bananas difficulty having them rarely miss you at all, resulting in you having to really master the bullet dodging twirl or you will die in no time. The difficulties are well balanced, with normal being for those looking for more of an experience with the game as opposed to the challenge that the others would bring. It results in everyone being able to enjoy the art form that is the bullet ballet of My Friend Pedro, without difficulty getting in the way. No matter your experience with such games, everyone can perform the bullet ballet of a majestic homicidal swan. As a whole, the gameplay to My Friend Pedro is great. It is adrenaline filled, action packed and completely over the top, all the while being stylish and graceful at the same time, making you feel like an absolute badass as you pull off some of the most incredible stunts ever in a shooter. It does have its problems, with the most notable being the reliability of platforming for difficulty increase that ends up detracting from the core gameplay. But despite that being the case, when My Friend Pedro does what it does best, it is glorious and you'll love every second of it. If I was to compare the atmosphere of My Friend Pedro to any other game, it would be Hotline Miami. It keeps up with that over-the-top action that the gameplay presents, with a soundtrack that just intensifies it, with music genres including synth, electronic and even electronic rock similar to that of Dance with the Dead, and pretty much every other similar genre in between. Throughout the whole experience you know you're playing something that is adrenaline inducing and action packed. Even during those quiet moments where you get a couple of seconds of peace and quiet, you know that the action is only literally around the corner, and that incredible atmosphere just adds to and intensifies the action of the gameplay ever more. My Friend Pedro is one of those games that nobody ever asked for. but never knew was actually needed. It is very hard to find a solid action-packed shooter that isn't the same as everything else that has been done 20 times over. And that is what makes My Friend Pedro so special. It is so unique, so different from that of any other shooter out there, all the while bringing you everything that you would have ever hoped for that could be considered awesome and cool. Bullet time, sick moves, styles, skateboards, motorbikes and a talking banana. What more could you really ask for? Underneath all that over the top and ridiculous action, despite having pretty rubbish plot, is extremely solid and well polished gameplay that will keep you hooked longer than it has any right to. Even when you finish the game, the chances are you will continue to play, whether it is in a harder difficulty or attempting to get the S rank. Despite its problems, especially that major one with the platforming, if there is one action game you need to own this year, this is it. And with that, I give My Friend Pedro an 8 out of 10. My Friend Pedro is a perfect example that with enough time, patience, passion and dedication, you can create a unique and outstanding game like nothing else out there. A great game isn't something that is made in a few months or even a year or two, or in some cases on Steam a weekend. A great game takes years to make, and the result of My Friend Pedro's 6 years of development shows the kind of results you can get.